welcome to Artistry. My name is Todd Bingham, and if you're unfamiliar with our series, let me tell you a little bit about the origins of Artistry. We originally shot 5 or 6 of these shows in 1981 and 82 with the purposes of bringing to you hands-on practical information about the business side of the art community. Now, through modern technology, we have transferred them to videotape, re-edited and updated them, and we hope you enjoy them. The interview you are about to see with myself and Patrick Nagel was shot in September of 1982, 2 years before Mr. Nagel's untimely death in 1984. Patrick Nagel, even having passed away at the premature age of 38, was of tantamount influence in the art gallery community for the entire decade of the 80s. With him during this interview is his then publisher, Carl Bornstein of Miraz Editions. I think the rest of the interview and the dialogue is self-explanatory, so without any more ado, let's join the interview now. Today we're pleased to have with us contemporary artist Patrick Nagel, and to his left, publisher and art gallery owner Carl Bornstein. Our topic today is the collaborative relationship between artist and publisher. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Carl, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your company, the name of it, and how it came into being?
How it came into being, you mean the publishing company?
Mm-hmm.
About 8 years ago, I moved to Europe, and just solely to get away from my previous occupation.
Which was?
Which was producing records and music business, which was fun, but I needed something new in my life. So I went to Europe. I had actually studied philosophy and art in school, and became very involved in acquiring and purchasing work for institutional collections and private collections. Spent a lot of time traveling in and around Europe, and at one point in time became very interested in the resurgence of an art form and the popularity of an art form, the poster, which was a sort of a two-dimensional, it is a two-dimensional art form. And
this was more of an avocation with you at that point?
At that point in time, it became an interest. I was dealing in other paintings and different work by Lautrec and Bonnard. What led me to that in a very sort of ancillary way was through these artists I found this very bold kind of medium, the poster, which at that point in history was a very important form of communication. But in any event, I was very drawn to the very bold, simple designs and what Bonnard and Lautrec and other people had managed to do. As a result of that, and traveling around Europe and doing all of this, we decided to, or I decided to start a publishing company. And basically just a new twist on an old idea, which was to publish posters for specific events, and we would design them for that event, talk to the person, sort of have them sponsor it. Then we would also distribute it and make it available to galleries and museums around the world.
What kind of events do you refer to?
Oh, let's see, certain museum openings. We've done posters for museum shows. We have done, let me see, we've done them for galleries who we sell to. Not necessarily an event, but a specific place or an event, some of each. We've published over well in excess of 100 editions. But what had happened was I just became very interested in this art form. And at the time, it seemed like a very good idea. I needed something to take with me back to Europe when I was traveling. And I had a small gallery at the time. In any event, at that point, I was looking for something that was very bold and could be hand silkscreened rather than printed commercially, something rather special and still accessible to the public, but technically superior to what was available at that point in time.
Like these?
This is a painting, and these are larger very limited edition graphics that have evolved out of Patrick's work.
Patrick, when did you first become acquainted with Mirage Editions?
Well, I'd heard about what Carl was doing with his gallery, and the fact that at that time he was also exhibiting what was called media art that had been used for album covers and commercial assignments.
Had you been doing that kind of work up to that point?
Yeah, until that point. That's the bulk of what I was doing.
I see.
And so I introduced myself to Carl and his gallery, and we decided to publish together. The timing was such that Carl was looking for something very specific, and I kind of walked in with it. The way that I work with the original art, which is someplace, lends itself very well to the serigraphy. There's very little concessions to the medium, so it works out very well for us.
It's beautiful. Has the style of the artwork that you've provided for these posters remained fairly intact since you started with Mirage, or have you felt that?
Stylistically, probably, in terms of technique and so on. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we've grown considerably.
Tell us a little of your background, if you will. I know you went to school here in Los Angeles.
Here in Los Angeles, to Chenard and Cal State. And I'm an LA kid. I grew up here. I started freelance taking commercial assignments while I was in my last year of school. So since then, on my own until Carl and I met.
And you hadn't done any posters before?
Not really. One or two posters that were offshoots of commercial assignments, but nothing on the fine arts line. Nothing like that. This is a whole new learning process for me over the past 5 years. This is a completely different market.
You've been doing primarily commercial work then?
Yeah. Commercial artists, for the most part, don't do things like sit here and do interviews. They just sit in their little studios. So it's a different experience for me. You know, more of a public kind of experience.
Carl, how many artists do you publish at this point?
Oh, actively on an ongoing basis, probably about 7 or 8. We have published 1 or 2 pieces by individual artists from time to time and not done a series, but usually we like to do an ongoing series. I might add that the first poster we ever published was with Patrick, and it was just it was an interesting idea at the time. We had fully intended, at the time we had an art gallery which was showing other things and basically was sort of a showroom here in the United States because I was traveling a lot at the time, and I really didn't want to travel anymore. I was sort of looking for something I could take with me to Europe that would make an interesting sort of exchange when I was there and provide the galleries. And since I traveled to New York at least 4 or 5 times a year, it seemed that would be good also. And what it did was it was just something that sort of brought me back to Los Angeles and grounded me here. And when we were looking, it was interesting because Patrick had come in and left some slides, oddly enough, for the show that we decided to put together, which was called media art, and it became several books later. It had several album covers in it, work like that, but sort of the reverse of what had happened before with the poster. The poster was the original because it was done on stone and hand done by the artist. In this instance, since media art is something that is ultimately photographed and reproduced in a mass way, the original was a painting usually. And so Patrick had come in and left the work, and I came back, and I think my assistant at the time showed me the work and said, well, what do you think? And I said, this is terrific. This is just what I've been looking for. And I called Patrick up, and we talked. And about 5 weeks later, he came back with the first design, and the rest was kind of history. He started a series of posters and graphics, and now paintings that have been...
Relative to the relationship between the publisher and the artist, I sense from what you've said up to this point that your functions with Patrick maybe go
a little ways beyond just that of a publisher and distributor. I should clarify, too, that you do distribute Pat's work as well.
Well, that's the classical, the word publisher has a lot of different sort of nebulous meanings, but in the classical case, a publisher is someone who makes it possible for an artist to print the work in one form or another when you're talking about editions, and then in one fashion or another makes that available to galleries and public spaces, so it's available to the public, so it can be disseminated somehow. And
in limited edition format.
yes, absolutely.
Patrick, what happens to the original artwork then in a case like that? Do you, is that a contractual agreement you have with the publisher?
The contractual agreement is that I retain all of the originals, and as it turns out, I have an interesting agreement that I also exhibit my originals with the other part of Mirage, which is the gallery. So,
well, let's say that I came to you and wanted to commission you to do an original piece of art. Would you be free to do that relative to your relationship with Mirage?
of course, yeah.
And could I then purchase that piece of artwork and then perhaps maybe go off and reproduce it myself?
Absolutely not.
Cannot do that.
No. No, see, we have these guys that are a lot muscular than I am.
I see.
Enforcers?
Yes. Right.
No, it's
Let me just interject a quick thought here. Part of what we've done, and part of, I think, anything that is of an aesthetic nature is to keep it as finite as possible. In other words, you wouldn't, in Patrick's commercial work, for a long time we had to examine what would be positive and negative for his career, and in reality, in the last several years, I think Patrick has cut out about 95% of all commercial work and is basically just painting, and in a sense, if you wanted to commission something, it would be for a specific purpose, and it would then be published as a work of art. And
also the reproduction is very specifically understood before
the
we
rights
would start
to it.
anyway. Yeah.
And between the two of you, who determines, for example, which works are to be reproduced and how many of them will be in the edition and which medium is to be used? Who makes decisions like that?
I draw the pictures and I
drop them off at the gallery.
I explain to Carl how wonderful they are and how well they're going to be accepted by everyone, and then Carl laughs and says, "Well, we'll publish the next one."
Well, that's pretty clear cut.
No, actually, I think it's we work real well together. It's been a real symbiotic relationship. We're very good friends, as well as we're partners. In the sense that I do what I do, which is to make a certain amount of commentary, and certainly not to infringe on any of Patrick's aesthetic decisions. But and then Patrick creates the artwork, and we discuss between us what we think would be the best image in light of maybe what we had published before, and not to put out too much work, even though Patrick's work is extraordinarily successful. We'd rather publish less than more right now, and just kind of keep it a very fine, not precious, but just something that you don't see everywhere, that you just see in galleries. And
well, Patrick, I know that someone mentioned that you had done some work for a television special some months ago, I believe, for David Copperfield.
David Copperfield, yeah.
That sounds fascinating. Can you tell us how that came about?
It was great fun. David's people called me from New York one day, and evidently they'd had a couple of the pieces. And David's kind of a young, classy kid. You know, he's got a very slick look to it.
Terrific. Yeah, terrific act.
Yeah, nice. There's an appeal there. And he wanted something very elegant to kind of backdrop what he does. So it was a fun project for me, because I had a chance to not only work on the graphics and the look of the show, but also some of the sets and that kind of thing.
They were enormous, as I recall.
Yeah.
Did you work on that scale, or did you work on a smaller scale and then?
No, I worked on the scale that I normally do, like what's behind us, and they were enlarged by the scenic department at NBC, which was also a great treat. went down there and watched them enlarge these pieces as
Was it done in
backdrop.
silkscreen?
No, they were hand painted.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I'm not sure exactly what that, what that means in terms of what was the original art, and so they were hand painted reproductions of the art.
Well, Carl, from the publishing point of view, then what are the legal implications there, where Patrick's art is being displayed on a media as far-reaching as television?
It's just very simple. When anything like that happens, sort of unrelated to just the directness of a painting or a graphic being sold, it's just you make a special arrangement, and David Copperfield had the one-time right to reproduce those on television, and the ownership of the originals remained Patrick's.
I see.
And in fact, those paintings were all placed in private collections several days after the show. It was a tremendous aid.
Patrick has his work in some fairly prestigious collections, I'm told.
He does.
The Smithsonian being one of them.
Yeah, he currently has a show, is part of a show with a good deal of his work and some of the other artists that we publish being traveled by the Library of Congress to several museums right now.
Well, as for that, when you do shows at Mirage or other galleries, is that a function of your business, Carl, or is that a thing you? I mean, how do the shows actually come about? Are you approached, or do you approach others?
It's a combination of both. Maybe we'll have 4 or 5 offers from galleries in San Francisco, and we'll just sit down and talk and assess, which one is the best environment for us to be in. And we're currently, for example, discussing a show in Paris, one in New York. There was one in New York not too long ago, so that won't happen again for at least another 18 months to 2 years. A show in Germany, and possibly a show in Australia. There have already been recently some shows in San Francisco, and that is of this kind of work here, which is the paintings on canvas, the larger paintings.
Now, is it the intention of these shows necessarily to promote the sales of the pieces of artwork that are on display, or is it a function of the show to market the artwork for? I mean, what, if you had to say, what would you say is the purpose of your show?
I think the most important thing is just to introduce the work. It's an enormous amount of work to put together a show like that. It's really months of work. So financially, the immediate financial benefit isn't
realized.
No. But what we're doing, it's a nice opportunity to meet new people, introduce new people to the work, and get them in to see the original and so on. And from there, because the graphics are available to more and more people, obviously more people than an original piece. That's, I think, the importance of it.
Do you enjoy going to the shows, meeting the people, shaking hands?
Yeah, sometimes. It's an awful lot of nice people come up and say wonderful things, and I enjoy that a lot. And it is nice to meet the people, but it's a lot of work also.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah.
You've been doing some work for Playboy, too.
Yeah, I've been working with Playboy for about 7 or 8 years now.
Oh, I hadn't realized that was that long. What is it? What's your relationship with them?
Well, I do 3 original pieces each month for the publication. And they're run here and picked up in Europe and Australia. And an occasional feature. I'll do a fashion feature or a piece of fiction or something like that.
Now that comes under the heading of commercial work, though, doesn't it? I mean, and you mentioned before that you were trying to steer away a little bit from that.
Playboy is the only consistent commercial work I do, only because I have such a great rapport with them. They're great people to work with. I really enjoy them, and
you don't feel that is in any way demeaning to the artwork?
I don't think so. I hope that people respond to it in the way that I approach it, which is just, it's fun.
Having a good time.
Yeah, it's fun work for me. I'm able to do whatever I feel like doing. I just send it in. There's no conversation involved at all. I just...
Oh, they don't give you any parameters?
No, none at all. So I just do
That's
3
what a
pieces
luxury.
that yeah, absolutely. That's why I continue to do it. So I send in the pieces, and and I've made some good friends over the years. So that's just a pleasure. Other than that, you know, an occasional commercial piece, but that's, you know, nothing like Playboy.
It's not something that it's not anything that we've tried to play off of anyway. We've never, in any of the press
Never
releases
done a Playboy
anything,
poster,
we've
for
never done
example.
anything like that, or tried to draw a parallel or capitalize on that particular association. I think that's something that Patrick just does because he really enjoys it.
Yeah, it's more personal. Yeah.
And also so is Andy Warhol, and a lot of other people have done things for Playboy. It's not a vulgar magazine, and I think that going back to something you asked before about exhibiting work, the work that Patrick sends into Playboy is usually very small acrylic on board, which are maybe this high, and they don't take a great deal of time. The paintings, on the other hand, he probably does 2 to 3 a month if he's really working hard.
In town.
If I feel like hurting myself, I'll do 2 or 3 a month. Yeah.
So that limits, again, the demographically how many shows a year you can have.
How many
and
do you do as for that?
Never more than 2.
Really, that few?
That few, yeah. 2 a year, and always in a different place.
It's just the amount of work to put together 15 or 16 or 17 large canvases like that. In addition to we try to keep the limited edition images fresh as well. It's a pretty good volume of work.
Aren't artists, though,
Temperamental and bitchy.
about that too, I suppose, but I was going to go on to ask that, don't artists have the license to go to those to whom they have sold work already and ask to then borrow that work for a particular show? You've never...
Yeah, I could, but my feeling is why go back, you know, and there's 1,000 fresh images in there, I can't wait to get them done, so there's no point in regressing and borrowing old pieces.
These women, are they any one in particular?
No. No, I use different models a lot. I have a couple favorite models. There's a resemblance to my wife, Jennifer, who I was painting before I met her. So there is some resemblance there. But no, I use different models most of the time. Although there is a resemblance in them. I'm sure that's just stylistically.
Are you at liberty to talk about your technique to any great extent? I noticed that all of these have been reproduced in silkscreen. How are the originals done?
They're they're acrylic on canvas. And I use small brushes. Other than that, it's
no
just
photographs or preliminary drawings?
Well, yeah, rather than have a model standing in front of me getting muscle sores and testy, I'll do a photo session. I will lay out a few ideas for some paintings or graphics. I'll take the photographs and work from those as reference. And from there I do the preliminary sketches, which Carl and I discuss. The sketches are, to me, that's the fun part. That's where all the problems are solved, and even the drawing has a quality that's much, much different than the finished pieces.
Do you ever let those drawings go?
Occasionally.
Do you?
Yeah, we are they're going to be seen probably for the first time soon. We're in the process now of editing a book of.
Are you?
Yeah, of the work, and this is an opportunity for me because probably 40% of the book will be drawings, which is a treat
now this
for
will
me.
be a book of plates of samples of your work and editions that have been
paintings,
published?
drawings, and prints.
Care to mention the publisher and when it will be out?
Who's the publisher and when will it be
Not
out?
yet,
Not
but it'll
at
be
this
out
point.
within, we'd say, about 8 months. It'll be a very handsome book, very large, a lot of color plates. And in fact, the good thing about the book is what it illustrates is that the posters, in fact, were a point of departure. It was an idea we had and something that that was a lot of fun and we enjoyed doing, but in fact we're doing less and less posters and more large graphics. When I say more, not that many. And Patrick's just doing a lot more painting. When he started taking these images up in size and painting them, I think he really, I mean, I haven't seen him so excited in the last 4 years, but it's really...
This is my version of excited.
This is
Yeah, that's it. But, so the book will show a lot of the paintings, a lot of the graphics, and some of the posters. But this is the direction that the work seems to be growing in, which is the larger paintings and just the graphics of this size.
Working on this scale, it really is a treat for me.
As opposed to a smaller scale?
Yeah, yeah. Because before Carl and I got together, it was just not practical with, you know, with the volume of work that I do to work much larger than, you know, a 30 by 40 sheet of ragboard.
Right, sure.
But now canvas comes in just about any size you like.
Yeah, sure.
And that's very exciting stuff to me. I don't know why they kept it a secret from me for so long.
Well, with just a little bit of time we have left, can you tell us a little bit about what your plans for the future are together, or, aside from an ongoing
I'm looking forward
relationship?
to the shows that were mentioned earlier.
Overseas?
Yeah, the overseas market is, there's some very exciting things happening in Europe right now. And I'm very much looking forward to going over and getting more involved with that. The market in Europe is just beginning for us. You know, there's a lot of interest right now.
Also Japan, which of late has been very excited about the work. As a matter of fact, people have been coming over and buying it out of galleries and taking it back over there. So recently we made a concerted effort and have gotten a great response in Japan for the work. So that's another area that there may be a show.
Right. I would think with the nature of the work, it would be terrifically suited for the Japanese market.
We hope
Well,
so.
Well, I do too. And gentlemen, it has been a distinct pleasure having you both on the show. I appreciate
enjoyed
you taking the
myself.
time to come down.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It sure does.
Thanks, Todd.
That's been our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Todd Bingham, and we'll see you next time.